Right. Now, let's turn our attention to supply. We've talked about the behavior of consumers, and now we are going to move on to look at how producers behave, suppliers, businesses, traders. Okay? So, supply is defined as the relationship between various prices and the corresponding quantities that firms are willing to offer per time period. Okay? The law of supply states that the higher the price of a good, the higher the price, the higher the quantity suppliers are willing to offer per time period. Okay? So this is the opposite situation to demand. For demand, higher prices result in lower quantities being demanded. In the case of supply, the law of supply states that the higher the price of a good, the higher the quantities that suppliers will be willing to offer to the market. Okay? For now, we want to ask, why does this law work? Why does the law of supply work? This comes to the idea of the goals of firms, because supply basically summarizes the behavior and goals of firms, okay, businesses, which might be sole traders, or they might be partnerships, businesses in the sense we see them as companies. The sole aim of a business is profit making. Okay, the purpose of a business is to make a profit, because if you cannot make a profit, there's no way you can stay in business, one. But also the general sense of profits. Profits are the rewards for entrepreneurship. Okay, entrepreneurs are people who take risks. They see something, an opportunity. It's not 100% sure. They take the risk of going in, employing resources, whether this be labor resources, other types of resources we have, and they employ these resources with the hope of having a profit. So the reward they get is profit. Okay, this is the sole aim of businesses. So now, the reason why the law of supply therefore works, it has to do simply with when prices are higher, the profit margin is also higher. What is a profit margin? The profit margin is simply, for example, when you sell your oranges, you are getting revenue. What you get, the income you get from selling, is called revenue. Okay? So for whatever revenue you have, out of this revenue, how much profits do you have? Okay? So this is what we call the profit margin. This is an idea that is very, very important in analyzing how viable a company really is, a business is. It does not, we don't look so much at the size of the firm, we look at the profit margin. Okay? For the money you receive, whatever amount of money you receive, out of that money, how much of it is your profit? Okay? Some firms may receive maybe millions of dollars or billions of dollars, but out of those billions of dollars, the percentage, the amount that is profit is really low. So the profit margin is very important. It's in percentage. Okay? So when prices are higher, the profit margin usually goes up. So firms are more willing to supply in the market. The second has to do with this idea of the law of diminishing returns. When we talk about firm theory, we look more into that. But simply, the law of diminishing returns relates to the idea that the more you employ a particular input of production, say maybe labor, the more you hire, if you keep everything else constant, okay, the number of machines you use and things like that, and you keep hiring more people, there reaches a point where hiring more people does not help anymore. Okay, so the returns to additional inputs of that same input gives less and less output. So that's the general idea. What we see here, it becomes difficult for farms to produce more and more units of output at existing capacity. Okay, it becomes more difficult. So farms can only do this, can only produce more when the price is high. They have an incentive to produce. Okay, so these two ideas of the profit margin and the law of diminishing returns, the difficulty in producing more and more units of output out of existing capacity, are the key reasons why the law of supply works. Okay, so again, the law of supply states the higher the price of a good, the higher the quantity suppliers are willing to offer per period. Let us clean this diagram a little bit so we can illustrate the law with our supply schedule. So opposite to, okay, we'll come to that. Opposite to what we see, we'll leave the main demand curve and then we'll draw our supply curve. Supply summarizes the behavior and goals of farms. Okay, they are profit making. They want to supply more of a good when its price rises, when the price is high. Now, so let's look at our supply schedule here. It has price, various prices and corresponding quantities. This is what a supply schedule is. Okay. So now what we see here is we have when the price is 0, how much units of oranges are suppliers willing to offer in the market? Well, when the price is 0, they offer 0 units. So they are willing to offer 0 units. When the price rises from 0 leons to 10 leons, they are now willing to offer 15 units of oranges, okay? Or 15 cars, if this is the case of a car manufacturer. So from 0 leons to 10 leons, now they offer 15 units, okay? Next, price, when the price goes higher to 20 leons, yeah, they are now willing to offer 30 units of cars, 30 cars, okay? The price goes to 20 leons, they are now willing to offer 30 units, right? When the price rises even higher to 40 leons, farms are now willing to offer 45 leons, okay? So 45 leons when the price goes to 30 leons, yeah. So this is 45 units. And then when the price rises higher to 40 leons now, from 30 leons to 40 leons, they are now willing to offer 60 units of the good. So when the price goes to 40 leons, they are now willing to offer 60 units of the good, okay? 60 units of the good, right? And when the price goes higher to 50 leons, they now are willing to offer 75 units of oranges into the market. So 75 is between 70 and 80 here. Okay, and when the price goes up to 60 leons, they are willing to offer 90 units. When the price goes to 60 leons, they are willing to offer 90 units. So we see actually, if we just draw our curve, our supply curve seems to go up in the opposite direction of the demand curve. So this is our supply curve. And here we have our demand curve. Okay? Now, if you can see, there is an interesting observation. So, of course, first of all, the law of supply, we see that the higher the price, the higher the quantity suppliers are willing to offer in the market. Okay? So, this illustrates the law of supply. Now, before we talk about the equilibrium, let us look at other factors that affect supply other than the price of the good. Okay? Other factors such as input prices, technology, productivity, government policies, expectations, and other things such as weather affect the supply curve. What these do, like we this in the discussion earlier, these are different from the change in the price. These are shifts in the supply curve. Okay, so the supply curve may either shift to the right or it may shift to the left. When it shifts to the right, we have this. Okay, so for example, input prices. If input prices, remember that the price of a good, like in the sense of the price of a good in the sense of producers, is about the cost of production. Okay, the cost it takes, how much it costs Mary to be able to bring fishes to the market is is reflected in the price she is going to be willing to receive for the fishes. Okay, so the similar idea works throughout supply. Okay, so the input prices. So the inputs that Mary will use, say for example, fishing nets, or say maybe the amounts they pay for fishing in the village river. Say maybe those are the inputs she uses, baskets for fishing, and the boats, the fuel they use for the fishing boats. Say these inputs, the price of fuel goes really down, okay, and say maybe the price of fishing nets goes really down, it falls. When it falls, this means now Mary is willing to receive an even lower price for the good. Okay, so because now the input prices have fallen, this has reduced the cost of production. So this is going to increase supply. Okay, this is going to shift the supply curve to the right. Right. The opposite case is when input prices rise. When input prices rise, if everything else is constant, this is going to cut down supply, so it shifts to the left. Okay. Other things that affect is technology. Say for example, a farmer in a village was using his hoe and cutlass for producing what do we say, yams, for producing yams, and all of a sudden he receives a tractor. The work he was able to do with 10, 50 people, now he can do it with the tractor in 3 hours at a fraction of the cost. Okay, because one, the tractor does not get tired, the tractor is much more powerful, it can cover a lot more work than people, it's less costlier to use. Okay, so the technology, the availability of technology is also going to increase the supply. Okay, so this also has the effect of shifting the supply curve for yams, right, when technology improves. Next factor that affects supply apart from the price is productivity, right? So productivity is defined as the output we receive for every unit of input we put into production. Okay, so for example, if I am producing my goods based on only the number of people I am hiring to work on my farm, so how much output do I get for every person I employ to work on the farm? This is the productivity of my farm. Okay, so therefore experience, training, health, and things like that are very, very important. So when, for example, you have a restaurant, maybe in the first few days people are going to struggle, they don't know the work yet, but maybe it take 3-4 months, they have gotten so used to their tasks, they've got experience. Okay, this is going to increase the the quantity you'll be able to supply. Okay, also say for example you train your staff. When you train them, training is going to improve their productivity. Now for each person the amount of output you are going to receive will be much higher because they have better skills and training, right? And health, of course, when people are sick, it's going to be difficult. Okay, when you have healthy workers, you are going to be able to produce much higher quantities. Right? So these have the tendency of shifting the supply curve to the right. In the opposite direction for productivity, say for example there is a big problem in a community, say there is a cholera outbreak, or say there is cholera outbreak, and so many of your workers are sick. What this will have the effect of shifting your supply curve to the left, because now the amount of dishes you'll be able to provide will be much lower. Okay, so productivity is important, right? Government policy also affects supply, mainly in the area of subsidies, which encourage production. These are basically monies governments give, or say they subsidize the cost you need for you to be able to go on to produce. These are often to encourage local production, for protectionism, for infant industries. Okay, they are also to encourage the production of particular type of goods that the government finds useful. Say, for example, agricultural products. This is very important there. And before the coming of the SLPP government, we saw fuel prices were subsidized, right? So subsidies are other things that affect the quantity that producers will be able to supply. The other intervention is indirect taxes. So the opposite case for subsidies, these are for demerit goods. Demerit goods are goods that maybe say the government or society regards to be degrading, okay, or their consumption has a negative impact on the person who is consuming them. Say, for example, alcohol, or say drugs such as tramadol. When tramadol came to this country, so many people were buying it. Okay, so what the government did, institute taxes and just make it difficult for people to be able to access tramadol. So the cost goes up high. Okay, so these are called excise taxes, because they try to excise the consumption of a particular good. Okay, so indirect taxes can be per unit. So for example, say every packet of gin or wine a company produces, we are going to, for every packet, we are going to take 0.80 leons. Okay, we are going to take 10 leons of every packet of gin. This will reduce the consumption. Okay, or it might be an ad valorem, as it's called. Okay, like value added tax, basically. So we may say 18% of this good is going to come in as an excise tax. Right? So government can affect the supply of a good by subsidies and indirect taxes or excise taxes. Okay. Another factor is expectations. Right? So when producers, sellers expect the price of the good they sell to rise, often this will lower the supply of that good, because they know they are going to earn. Remember, they follow incentives. They are individuals. Okay, making decisions, they are affected by incentives. They know they are going to receive a higher price in the future. They tend to lower supply now. They supply less, so that in the future they can supply with higher prices and have higher profits. The goal of farms, right? Other factors that affect the supply of a good are weather. The weather, for example, floods. When there is a flood, for example, like really heavy floods, they are going to affect rice production. This will affect the amount of rice that farmers will be able to supply in the market. Adverse weather conditions tend to shift supply to the left, whereas really good weather conditions may shift it to the right. Okay. Famines also another example. So these are the factors that affect supply other than the price of the good. Okay. Now, we see an interesting phenomenon here, where we have our demand curve sloping negatively and our supply curve sloping positively, but they seem to cross at a particular price and quantity. Okay. At the price 30, we see that the quantity when the price is 30 leons here, we see that consumers are willing to demand 45 units of oranges, here 45. But we also see that suppliers are willing to supply 45 units of oranges. This is very important. This is what we call the equilibrium price and quantity. Okay? This is the equilibrium, where quantity demanded and quantity supplied are equated, where the amounts that suppliers are willing to supply and the quantity that consumers are willing and able to purchase is just equal. This price is called an equilibrium price. Okay? Where quantity demanded and quantity supplied are both equal. This is an equilibrium. The idea we are talking about here, an equilibrium. Okay? So, we have to note that the price a good is sold in a competitive market. A competitive market, I don't want to talk much about markets. It's a market where there are many sellers. The good is often homogeneous, like it's almost identical. Okay, so it means individual sellers and buyers cannot influence the price. The price is determined by the interaction of demand and supply. Okay, by the sellers and buyers as a whole, not an individual. Okay. In a competitive market, issues such as stability. Is this going to be stable? Is this price this seller is going to charge stable in the future? Is this barber competent to barb? Competent to produce this to sell this kind of cookery? Is this a fair price? Okay. All of these questions in a competitive market are left to in a competitive market are left to the market. They are not determined by government. Okay, these are individually, they are collectively determined by the interaction of sellers and buyers as a whole. The interaction of demand and supply. So here we've seen that only at this price, 30, that quantity demanded and quantity supplied are equal at 45 units. Sellers are willing to supply 45 oranges and consumers are willing to consume 45 oranges. This is the equilibrium in a competitive market. Okay? I just want to quickly note the idea of consumer and producer surplus. Right? Now, normally there is a price, there is an equilibrium price. This equilibrium price where we are both happy. Okay? What we are willing and able to buy and what the suppliers are willing to offer in the market. Say this, we have our supply curve here, and this is our demand curve. This is the price. These are the various prices, possible prices per unit. Okay, and these are the various corresponding quantities that we have. Right? At the price P is the equilibrium price, where supply and demand are equated, as we have there. Now, this is the equilibrium price. With this space we have up here is the consumer surplus. For example, I come to the market, I have really been looking for oranges. I'm willing to pay 80 leons to buy an orange. Okay, to pay 80 leons to buy an orange. Say, for example, the maximum I'm willing to pay is 80 leons, right? And then the seller, the minimum he is willing to receive is, say, for example, 60 leons, right? When I come to the market, but the equilibrium price is, this minimum price reflects the cost of production to the producer, to the person bringing the oranges to the market, right? So now I come and pay 70 leons is what I pay in the market. Now I am so happy here because I was willing and able. I have enough money and I'm willing to pay up to 80 leons for an orange. But when I'm in the market now, I meet the price to be 70 leons. So this means the price I'm willing and able to pay, the maximum I'm willing and able to pay, which is 80 leons, minus what I actually pay, which is 70 leons, gives me a consumer surplus of 10 leons. Okay, so this is an extra enjoyment. This is an extra I get from buying. This is the consumer surplus. Okay, above the equilibrium price, the space between what I'm willing to pay highest and the equilibrium price gives me my consumer surplus. In the case of the producer, like I said earlier, say he is willing to receive only at least 60 leons per orange, because this is what it costs her to go and buy the oranges, to travel with them and things like that. Okay, per orange. Now, when I come and I pay 70 leons, he is so happy, because for him, he has enjoyed a surplus also. He has also enjoyed a surplus because he was willing to receive 60 leons, but now the equilibrium price is 70 leons. So he has also gained 70 minus 60 leons, which is equal to 10 leons. So we both go back to our houses with 10 leons of consumer surplus. Okay, so this idea here, producer and consumer surplus, is extremely important, especially when we come and look at government intervention, the reasons and how government intervenes in an economy. Okay, normally in a competitive market, the equilibrium price, this price P, is where consumer and producer surplus is maximized. Okay, this is the equilibrium price. The equilibrium price is where consumer and producer surplus is maximized. So the equilibrium price is where producer surplus and consumer surplus are maximized. Let me just write MAX. Okay? So this brings us to the end, to the theory of demand and supply. Like I told you earlier, this is an extremely important topic in economics, because you see it everywhere. The ideas we discuss here, you see them throughout economics. But we won't go further to talk about anything else until we look at elasticity of demand and supply. Okay? I hope this lesson has been useful to you. Thank you very much. I'm Sam Barry.